What do you think I mean when I say the best board games for couples? Because I've searched all over the internet for the best board games for couples, and I have run into nothing but problems. It seems like that query just doesn't work. What I find are excellent two-player games like Patchwork or Seven Wonders Duel or Fox in the Forest, or I find non-competitive games like Sagrada or Splendor. Not that there's anything wrong with those games, but that's not what I'm looking for when I use these keywords, best board games for couples. What I want is a two-player game that is thematically endearing or sweet, something that I would enjoy playing with my wife and maybe nobody except my wife, because it would be a board game for a couple. That's what I'm looking for, and after all of my searching, that's what I found, but I've only found 3. Those are the 3 games that I'll be talking about in this video. Hi, my name is Ben, and on this channel, I make all kinds of videos about board games. Mostly, I make lists, like top 10 lists, or I do comparisons between different board games, but at the same time, I've programmed and maintain a web app called theperfectboardgame.com. However, most recently, I have launched a new t-shirt design, which I'm wearing right now. This one is in response to people who were interested in the original design, but couldn't afford the higher price for that premium shirt. Anyway, if you're interested in that, you can check it out at theperfectboardgame.com or the link at the bottom of this video. And if you want to know more about how the 2 shirts compare and why one is so much more than the other, I'll put in a little bit more information at the end of this video. Anyway, let's talk about the games now. As I mentioned in the introduction, I have actually been looking for years, kind of, while playing games with my family, I've been trying to find better games to play with my wife. And I've had a hard time with it, but I finally found 3 excellent thematic strategic board games that would play well with you and your significant other. The first game is called Embers of Memory, and it's based on a book series by Sarah J. Maas, which is one of my wife's favorite authors. And in fact, that's why I bought the game in the first place, but I didn't know then how compelling this game would be and how sweet it would be in kind of a dramatic ways. You'll soon find out. But my wife, who has read everything that Sarah J. Maas has ever written, is really interested in this game, and I, who have not read anything by the author, am also very interested in this game. Now, I should also mention that the game is a re-implementation of another game called Ravens of Three Saharshi, which is a game I have not ever played, but from looking at the 2 and the rules for both, they are very similar. If you've heard of that, then this game probably won't surprise you. If you haven't heard of that, this game is unlike anything I've ever played for more than one reason. So, first, one of the unique characteristics of the game is because it's based on a book, the game is played out in chapters. And aside from some flavor text and artwork, the rules of the game are delivered 1 chapter at a time. So over the course of playing the entire game, you will discover the depth of its strategy and also the plot. That also means that to describe this game could potentially give some spoilers. And so if you're really strict about spoilers, I would say you might want to skip ahead a little bit, just go to my final thoughts. However, what I'm going to share with you is just the basic gameplay that's delivered in the first 2 chapters. I've decided that's enough to give away the essence of the game without spoiling what the game is really about and some of the surprises that it has in later chapters. So that being said, let's take a look at how the game is played. If you want to skip ahead now, and then I'll tell you my thoughts on the game. The story is centered on Aelin, a fae, or fairy, who is being held captive. Her captor is attacking her mind, but another character, who takes the form of a wolf, is able to aid her through communicating with her through a psychic connection. This connection is represented by cards, or memories, that are played in the playing area, or Aelin's mind. Every chapter of the game is 3 days of Aelin's imprisonment. Each day, the player playing as Aelin is dealt 4 cards, called her resolve. The cards are ordered 1, 2, 3, 4. And to win, by the end of each day, Aelin must be able to take a card from the mind that will help the rows in her resolve sum to 7. At the same time, there must not be any cards exposed in the mind that don't match the colors of the cards in the resolve. Such cards are called distractions. While a distraction is present, Aelin must discard instead of strengthening her resolve. Of course, Aelin can't tell Fenrir any of this. Fenrir's job is to place memories in the mind. The memory should vary in color and value in order to provide Aelin options of cards to take, but once the draw deck runs out, the game is lost. Cards must be placed so that at least one shadowed corner overlaps another. Sometimes a demon comes out. When this happens, discarded cards are removed from the game. This makes the subsequent days of the round much harder. So gameplay continues like this, with Fenrir placing cards in the mind, trying to make sure that there are no distractions and giving Aelin lots of options, and then Aelin selecting a card of her choice and finding ways to communicate without words what she needs to Fenrir. So now I'd like to share my thoughts about the game, and this part of the video is spoiler-free. The thing I really like about it, there's a few things actually. First of all, it's refreshing to play a game that is so entirely different. I enjoy that, but I will say the game does feel very abstract, and because it's such a different game, it's not very intuitive. It's actually a little difficult to get into, or if you put it down and you don't come back to it for a little while like we did, it's kind of hard to pick it back up again because you're going, how does this play it again? Oh yeah, that's kind of weird and stuff like that. If you can get past that though, I feel like the story and how it unfolds chapter by chapter is really engrossing. I know that each time we finish one chapter, we really want to look into the next chapter and see how things are going to change. And that's excellent for a game like this. Also, what makes this game distinct is there's a lot of tension in the game because this is an asymmetrical game. This is the only game on my list, in fact, where both players are doing something very different. So one player, Aelin, is looking at her partner and thinking, oh, do this, come on, do this for me. But they can't communicate. And then Fenrir is trying to read these signals and seeing what Aelin discards and plays and trying to figure out what it is that she'll need next. And so the wordless problem solving that takes place between two partners was really fun for us, and that's why we really like the game, but I think mostly we just want to see how it ends. We haven't finished it yet. And that game is Embers of Memory. The next game is probably not a big surprise if you've been searching for board games for couples as long as I have. It is the most commonly recommended game of this category, and with good reason, because it's an excellent game. The game is Fog of Love. Fog of Love is a role-playing game in which you are a fictional person with traits, features, and goals, or destinies. The object of the game is to satisfy your own relationship and character goals. These typically have 3 factors to consider: whether the relationship terminates or lasts, the relative satisfaction of both you and your partner, and your character traits at the end of the game. To do this, players will simulate an entire relationship, acting it out through responding to numerous situation cards. When presented with a situation, both players will know the consequences for picking each option. Those consequences depend on the option selected, and sometimes there are additional effects if the players both select the same or different options. Secretly, both players choose one of the options, and simultaneously both selections are revealed. The effects are applied, and the gameplay moves to the next situation cards. And of course, there's a bit more to it than that, as there are many love stories to be played out, and each love story has custom situation cards and different types of reactions or special events that can happen during gameplay. I love Fog of Love. I think thematically this game is so well executed. It has humor, it has irony, and it has a cooperative element that I think is so interesting. Like, it's a semi-cooperative game. Players can play against each other because they are trying to break up. Their destiny dictates what they should try to do. Or they can switch destinies and they can change things and they can start working together and try to end up in a relationship where they stay together. There's a really interesting luck mitigation. It's almost like if you get cards that don't work in your favor, you can just change the type of game you're playing. Okay, we want to play cooperatively. Let's try to like fall in love and get married at the end of this game. Oh wow, my cards really suck. Oh, this isn't working out. Oh shoot, I'm really unhappy here. And then you kind of shift to like, well, maybe we should break up. That change that happens over the course of the game models what happens in an actual relationship. Like the whole thing is just thematically through and through consistent. Number one is a game that came out in 2014. Now, I put a link to it in the description on Amazon, but I will say the game is sold out right now, and so I bought my copy used from Board Game Geek. Now, I've heard there's going to be a reprinting of the game, probably this year, in fact. And so you can check that out, and maybe you can order on Amazon and have it delivered in 2 days. But if that isn't the case, go ahead and check out any other platform, eBay or Board Game Geek, and see if you can get a used copy, because the game really is great. Anyway, the game is called And Then We Held Hands. Let's take a look at how it plays. Between both players is a board with concentric rings. Each node on the board represents a positive or negative emotion: happy, calm, angry, and sad. As players move from one node to the next, their emotional balance shifts. For example, moving to a sad node will shift the balance to -1. Moving to a happy node will move it up 1, back to 0. Players can only make legal moves while the emotional balance stays between -2 and +2. At the beginning of the game, players can only move along the outer ring. Cooperatively completing 8 objectives will allow them to move closer to the center. Each objective simply requires one of the 2 players to land on a specific emotion. The goal of the game is to meet in the center, one after the other, with an emotional balance of 0. To accomplish all this, players take turns playing cards from their hands. The cards have a complex emotion on them, with 2 colors, one on the left and one on the right side of the card. Cards are splayed in front of players, so only one side is visible. A player can play a card from their own hand or their partner's hand. Each card allows them to move to a new node. At the end of the turn, players may only draw up to their hand limit of 6 if they have an emotional balance of 0. Furthermore, as player position shifts from one side of the board to the other, so their hand splays from one direction to the other, possibly opening up more options. When you compare this game to Fog of Love, it looks so much more abstract. You've got just a board with colors and symbols on it. Your people are represented by stones. The artwork in the cards is very, very nice, and I enjoy it a lot, but this is a very simple looking game, so why am I so excited about it? So here's the thing about how I review games. I am always able to look past the components if the gameplay is really solid, if the game accomplishes what it set out to accomplish. So this is a game which is about supporting your partner through emotional difficulty. And you will feel it, even in its abstract little form. So here's what this looks like. Your partner knows that we need to achieve an objective. And so what she does is she plays a sadness card or an anger card and drops her emotional balance down to -2, just so that she can satisfy the objective. And maybe she plays one of her own cards, and because she's at -2, she's not able to replenish her hand. When I see that, it's like, oh, she's taking one for the team. Like, it feels like she's sacrificing herself, like putting herself in this thematically emotionally difficult situation. But in the gameplay, it is a tactically difficult situation. And so for my part, what I feel is, how can I rescue her from this pit of negativity that she's currently in with her, sadness card and her anger card? And so you end up thinking, okay, well, if I do this and that, then, we'll set her up to get that objective so she can replenish her hand and, try to get her emotional balance back to 0. You have to look the whole time. You have to consider what your partner's position is on the board and how you can get them into a better position. You cannot win the game if you just focus on playing your cards to accomplish your best move. You have to consider your partner's position on the board and the options they have available before them. If you can do that, winning is, well, so far, as we've played it, winning doesn't seem that difficult, but you have to be aware of your partner. So even the way that I'm describing it, you have to be aware of your partner. It sounds like I'm describing a relationship, not a game. The game captures that really well in simple gameplay, and that's the other thing. When I make a comparison to Embers of Memory, Embers of Memory, fantastic game, excellent story. I get involved with it, but Embers of Memory is difficult to play. It's hard to remember the rules, actually. This game is simple. You set it up fast. The rules are easy to remember forever. And you can play it pretty quickly. Or if you play it and you lose, because you can probably lose in as little as 5 minutes if you're struggling with it, but you can easily just say, hey, let's play it again. Let's try again real fast. So let's compare all three. In Embers of Memory, the gameplay is over the course of 3 days, and that makes the game feel like it's short because each day is short, but it's also a little repetitive because you're having to play a day 3 times in a row. But again, it's got the story element, so I really like that. It's the strongest storyline. Fog of Love is thematically or in terms of components, is the best execution thematically. It looks like a game that represents romance and relationships. I mean, the situation cards, it's very literal in its theme. And it's a longer game. It's a much more, that takes an hour to play, I would say. And then if you look at And Then We Held Hands, this is metaphorically thematic. Very, very strong theme, but it doesn't have any of the components to support the theme. It's all in the way you relate to your partner as you play. And then gameplay this is the simplest game to play. A short game, very easy to play multiple times. So you could, if you're going to buy any of these, you can make your judgment based on that short summary. Now that's it. That's all I found so far. However, I do have 2 honorable mentions. There is a great party game called Ladies and Gentlemen that I think is great for groups of couples. It's a bit of a satire game. And then there's another game that I thought was amazing, except it's only in Spanish and German, I think. And it's called Romeo and Juliet. I wish I could play it, but I don't really want to play a game in Spanish. That would be difficult for me. Aside from that, those 5, with those 2 honorable mentions, I haven't found anything else. If you've got a great one, it has to be a game for couples though, right? Under my definition. Let me know in the comments. So lastly, I said I would compare these 2 shirts so you can understand what the difference in the price is all about. Right now it's a $20 difference in price. So the full print in black and white is a very thick, softer fabric, and the quality of the print is excellent. This is a shirt that really wows. Whereas the one I'm wearing right now, this is a thinner and not as soft shirt. The printing, not that it's bad, but because it's smaller, the definition isn't as great. And then lastly, the print that goes all over sleeves and back and everywhere, that's just more expensive to produce. So hopefully that answers any questions you may have had. Thank you very much for watching this video. I'm having a lot of fun making content for you and responding to your comments. I hope to continue doing it, and I hope you'll stay with me, and I'll see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.